Welcome, 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 our beloved elder and visionary community stalwarts and leader, Elder Amanuel Melles. We so appreciate your consistent vigilance, conviction, passion for our community in so many ways. And as always at SETC, we begin all things by acknowledging and giving thanks to our Creator. We acknowledge all the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So, Elder Emmanuel, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work?
Thank you so much for that beautiful opening, my brother Victor. I'm so humbled and privileged to be in conversation and in communion with you. I know collectively we've gone through many years about creating the conditions for change for our community. So I'm so happy to be in conversation with you today. I have been in the sector for almost 30 years now, and in various roles, some of which in the past allowed us to intersect paths, so to speak. In my work in the sector, it started with the settlement sector at OCASI, and then ventured into the community health sector in the Lawrence Heights area. From that, I was working with Family Service Toronto, helping a major counseling organization in the city build a community development arm, so to speak. And then I was brought to United Way, where I've done a lot of work with my colleagues in creating different programs, grant programs, led the establishment of the capacity building unit. One of the memorable moments there was the establishment of City Leaders, the Creative Institute for Toronto Young Leaders that graduated, 100 young leaders, many like you that are now, creating waves in the sector. At the moment, I think I'm so humbled to hold the space for my colleagues at NABC, the Network for the Advancement of Black Communities. I can't believe it's been 5 years, and this is kind of a product of the collective leadership of the community, working first and foremost with the Ontario government at York University, incubating this new systems transformation organization. And I intentionally use the word holding the space because that's the approach that I'm taking to all this. Like, we're servants first, we're cultivators and environment where others should act. And so I'm pleased to be able to talk to you about some of the stuff that we are collectively doing, because we're kind of the catalysts there. And there are so many hands to it. And that's why, I'm really pleased to learn about the work that you're doing and others are doing in the sector.
Ashe. Your humility is always astounding to me. And it's a beacon of hope in terms of the type of servant leadership that we require in these times in so many ecosystems and sectors. So once again, I appreciate you for all you do for so many. So my next question, Elder, what inspires you right now in your work? What has you curious? What's lighting your fire?
For me, I think after 30 years in the sector, I ask those deeper questions of myself and of the relationships that I have in the ecosystem. As you know, I'm a former marine ecologist, and I approach all my work from an ecosystem perspective. And I think about the village. I think about what does it take to actually shift the mindsets of our Black leaders and colleagues in Canada and elsewhere. And that doesn't start by first shifting our own mindset as leaders, yeah? And I think one of the things that is really inspiring at the moment is like, what is that I could do in terms of creating the conditions for others to really ask the deeper questions. Like, if you look at a number of socioeconomic indicators 20, 25 years ago and today, we've not made a lot of progress. A lot of our communities are on the periphery of Canada. So we can't but ask the difficult but necessary questions, yeah? And so for me, it's just like, how do you do that with care and empathy, How do you have, courageous conversations by creating a condition that allows all the leaders that are putting their fingers on it to see themselves in the picture, yeah? How do you actually do this without appearing too much at the front, yeah? And that's why holding the space as a concept is important, yeah? So if you take Black youth unemployment, you take, health, mental health, housing, on a number of the socioeconomics, the social determinants of health, how do you create different conditions? And I think part of the work that I've been leading with my colleagues around systems transformation is actually recognizing that there are limits to the types of approaches that we have been doing. Projects are great, but projects, are an instrument, for example. Yeah, like, I always say to myself and my colleagues, no heroic Black leader, no government, no funder can deliver results for Black communities. We have to actually put around the table all the different actors. And like the ability to do that, to catalyze. And I'm happy to talk to you today, for example, some new things that we're going to try doing in 2024 that builds on recent work. But in general, it's like, how do I create the conditions for our Black leaders 15, 20 years from now, not to have the same conversations that we're having today?
Ashe, ashe. So they'll probably be having it by hologram. So we definitely have to make sure that we leave the ecosystem and the space better for our ascendants. I agree completely. So my next question is, what challenges and barriers do you face in your work? And what are some of the approaches you and your colleagues are taking to overcome some of these barriers and challenges?
I think the biggest challenge that we have at the moment, frankly speaking, is one of mindset. When we sit at the policy and funding table talking to governments and philanthropic leaders and other influencers, we need to really get our leaders to think that we cannot solve a $100 problem with a $10 investment. Yeah. We need to be able to recognize that a big chunk of our challenges require collaborative solutions. So we need to be able to prepare our leaders to have different conversations. And that's why I go back and say, like, most of our conversations, whether we like it or not, they have to be courageous, first and foremost among ourselves. So there are two kind of taglines that we bring at NABC in our work. We are in the business of shifting the mindset of leaders, starting from ours. The second is going to take a village to raise solutions for Black communities. Yeah. And so, so I think part of the challenges is one of the mindset, because we want to make sure that our leaders, when they sit at the policy and funding table, they have different type of conversation than the usual we had in the last many years. The other thing is we have to really make an effort to connect the dots. There's so many amazing things are happening in Canada at the moment when it comes to Black communities, but there are islands, many of them. Yeah, how do we kind of like, yes, islands are important, but let's try to even build an archipelago. Like let's connect the dots so that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. That we don't create fragmentation in silos. That we're at least on the same highway, if not on the same lane. Yeah. So that we need to really do that. The other is one of timeline. Timeline, I mean, I look back and I see 30 years in the sector now, yeah? And so when I am sunsetting and looking at the future, I want to be able to lay the conditions that our leaders need to be able to tackle the challenge that we face in a different way. That's why innovation is important, yeah? And last year, for example, we joined the Community Foundations of Canada and Social Innovation Canada to a Canada-UK exchange week. And we really invested a lot of time to make sure that there was a sizable delegation of Black leaders joining that. The reason I say that is like, if anything, the challenge that we're facing as communities require innovation. So innovation should be mainstreamed, if you want, in the streets of Black Canada. Yeah? So part of this is like, trying to really, programs and services are important. We need investment there. We need to continue advocating, but it's time for us to actually pay attention into systems transformation. Yeah. And to do that, we need to understand the system. We need to be able to also go beyond our immediate box. We need to look what's happening in the African diaspora. in terms of solutions and innovation. We need to look at the continent. We need to, and when we talk about the UNDK of people of African descent, this is an invitation for us to look at the assets and capacities of the village. Yeah? So this year, for example, with our colleagues, we have been in discussion with South Africa to launch a series 30 February on Afrocentric systems transformation, for example. Yeah. And like if you bring systems change or systems transformation and Afrocentricity together, our value systems, the Nguzo Saba principles and other value systems, how will we think and do systems transformation differently? Yeah. And so we're excited about some of these things, but also like, around housing as a complex challenge that we face. At NABC, we believe strongly around investing in networks. Yeah. So some networks are networks based on issues such as housing, for example. Others are on some of those, segments of our Black Canada that need to be, given the opportunity to participate. For example, we've invested a lot of time in resources to support the establishment of the Rwandan Canadian Interagency Hub, for example. Yeah, we're working on supporting Portuguese-speaking networks in Canada. The people from Mozambique, Angola, Brazil, and other places. Yeah, that there is a common denominator in our language, but we need to bring them into mainstream Black Canada, so to speak. We're incubating a national Black Canadian housing center that will be based in Halifax. We cannot do this if we cannot mobilize the strengths and the assets of the village, so to speak. Yeah. So I think we rejoice in our role of catalyzing. And so, in doing that, we need to transform adversity into opportunities for change. Yeah. And we're not going to win always, but at least as we move ahead, I think we need to be able, with a sense of humility, recognize that all we're doing, we're planting the seeds. Yeah. In Halifax, there's a lot of work happening around the road prosperity to economic empowerment. In Calgary, there's a lot of stuff that's starting to happen around, the Calgary African Canadian Collective, 45 organizations there. In all these cities that you see, we need to create an intercity story there of relationship, yeah? So that we don't reinvent the wheel, we amplify the existing energy on the ground. And this is what, keeps me excited. As I said, the challenges mostly reside and revolve around convincing our leaders that, we are better off working together, and we need to strengthen the village, so to speak.
I love that. We need to start with intercity stories. It's incredible the amounts of, one, just key priorities that NABC has as an organization, but the fact that you're not trying to own, you're catalyzing, planting seeds, and actually building community. And even that phrase, it takes a healthy village to basically lift up healthy solutions for the Black community, speaks once again to the incredible sentiments that you have in terms of what community economic development and community development at large looks like. So once again, I appreciate you sharing all those priorities. So it's a perfect segue to my next question. How do you feel about the future of leadership and community development in Canada for Black communities?
I'm quite optimistic, and partly it's like my optimism stems from the fact that over so many years I have seen a lot of Black young leaders, with bold ideas and conviction, move forward and create stories of change, and create organizations of change. I've seen them in action over the last year. Even post-pandemic, we have seen a number of key Black organizations and leaders moving things for Black communities. I'm very optimistic. I'm as you know, my approach has always been in the sector, advocating and championing and mentoring a lot of these Black young leaders. And I think, I'm very optimistic about what is ahead of us. One of the things that I feel we need to do more of is really bring the energy and the wisdom outside Canada and the diaspora, the African diaspora in the continent, create pathways for learning and exchange so that our leaders here within Canada have the benefit of really tapping into so many innovative initiatives and solutions that are being crafted outside this country. And I think, like, when you talk about the global being the local, we have a framework now. It's called the Permanent Forum of People of African Descent. Yeah. When I was at New York at the UN in May with the Canadian delegation, I was blown away by the energy and dynamism of delegates from Brazil, from the continent, from Europe, from the Americas. And I think if we were to intentionally create pathways of connection for our leaders, then we'll all be better off. The last comment I would say is, you know, in the African ways of knowing and indigenous ways of knowing, we have a lot of opportunity actually to generate new knowledge and practice for our communities. And I'm excited about that because in future, we'll be talking more about even efforts that we're doing to bring Black and Indigenous leaders together, yeah, to look at, you know, evaluation and learning from African ways of knowing, indigenous ways of knowing. So I think the future looks bright, and it's in the hands of the right folks, because we have a lot of amazing leaders like yourself and others in our community that are going to carry the day.
Ashe, ashe. We're trying our best to steward the work of remarkable elders and leaders like yourself, Elder, and I give thanks as always. So my second last question, what is your ultimate goal, and what does success look like and feel like to you and your colleagues?
I think success for me should take the form of really cementing a new paradigm where governments, funders, different types of funders, philanthropic and otherwise, Black leaders and allies are literally seeing themselves as partners in solution. That we need to remove this paradigm where we are in a transactional relationship among ourselves. We need to recognize that we need transformation, and we cannot do that if we don't transform ourselves. We need to be really seeing leadership from a servant lens, yeah, from a collaborative lens, yeah. So my success in terms of all this is, I'm so confident, and I have seen this over the many years, that change will happen by the dint of so many actors and situations and conditions. What is really needed at the moment is to really transform the current state of relationship between us and the rest of the world, so to speak, governments, funders, and so on, to have a different relationship so that we can cultivate together solutions that work for Black communities. I'd like 20 years from now, I hope Black leaders will not talk about Black youth unemployment twice the provincial average in Ontario. You know, I hope that we'll not be talking about the many isms of challenge 15, 20 years from now. People like myself and yourself and others, we have the moral responsibility to lay the foundation for a different change for our communities in the coming years, yeah? And to do that, we need to be able to, you know, show courage and empathy in our relationship with government, and not shy away from, you know, bringing the difficult questions, divorcing ourselves from the outcome that puts us at the front, that we're actually creating a different reality for generations to come. I've always said to folks, you know, if we cannot plan for 7 generations, let's at least think for 1 or 2 generations.
Ashe, I couldn't agree more. My wife says the same thing all the time. Yeah, so I appreciate your leadership, your candor as always. And my last question, do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and viewers?
I do. I think the call to action is, for me, you know, we are invited actually, you know, we're passing stories in our lifetimes, yeah? I think we're called to actually leave a footprint, if you want, that inspires others, you know, to really change. One of the things that I often receive from the community is calls for mentorship. At the moment, I have, I don't know, 3 or 4 people that I'm mentoring, yeah? So I'm asking people like myself and like yourself, those that are out there influencing, to really give time and energy to mentor and support other leaders, yeah? That's very critical as one call of action there. The other thing is, please let's start work together to really build the ecosystem, build the village. Because if we have a strong village in Canada, if we have a strong village in the diaspora, then we are better off in terms of creating conditions for change. At the moment, this fragmented space that we have that's dictated by access to funds and so on, we should remove that. We should really front the data and evidence and say, if we work together, actually, we'll be far better off in terms of tackling the challenge. So my call to Black leaders is step back and look at the forest. Don't be lost in the trees. Projects are important, access to funds are important, but step back and ask the system questions around housing, around health, around education, child welfare. And when you do that, you will realize that, we need each other. We need to create a wave of strengths, yeah? Let's not be driven by funds and access to dollars to do the thing. The funds are important, but they are an instrument, yeah? So I'm hoping that in 2024, we will endeavor more to be able to put time to connect the dots. Because if we do that, we have a stronger village and we're better off.
Ashe, our strongest resource is our relationships. I couldn't agree more. Elder, you are a mentor, a guide, a humble, courageous, and honorable elder. And yeah, we love you and we care about you and we give thanks for all that you do for so many. You've consistently showed up when we've called, and that call and response is so important in our community. And just once again, I appreciate all that you do for so many. And at SETC, we close the way we began, by acknowledging and giving thanks to our creator, by giving thanks to the original stewards, the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toil without compassion or compensation, all those whose bones lie at the bottom of the transatlantic, who said freedom or death. We acknowledge all our elders, the community stalwarts, whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much, Elder Amanuel. We appreciate you.
My brother, thank you for all the leadership and the hosting and stewarding that you're doing. I'm so pleased to be able to continue the stories of change with you and others in 2024. Thank you for having me today.
Ashe.